I have just some leftover chicken, or you could use rotisserie chicken that you might have left over, or buy the rotisserie chicken for the dish, or roast off or poach some chicken. But you want to have about 2.5 cups or so of just pieces of chicken. Now I have both the white meat and the dark meat in here, and I just tore it into bite-sized pieces. You could cube it with a knife if you wanted to, but I kind of like the rustic look of just the torn pieces. Now, in this bowl, I have 1 block, 8 ounces of cream cheese, and about 12 ounces or so of sour cream. And I'm gonna just start by mixing those together. All right, then I'm gonna add 2 cans of cream of chicken soup. If you don't have the cream of chicken, you could use cream of mushroom, or cream of celery. You could use really any of those cream of soups. You know, there's all kinds of them. You could use whatever you wanted. I just like the extra boost of the cream of chicken soup. If you don't have the soup, you could use chicken broth and thicken it up with a roux or a cornstarch slurry, and use that if you wanted to, would be fine. But this is just an easy, quick pantry item. Now I'm gonna scrape down my bowl and I'm gonna mix all that together. I'm actually gonna add, I've got some poppy seed here. I'm gonna put about half of the poppy seeds in my casserole base. Then I'm gonna add the rest to the top. In just a second, we'll mix that up, incorporate the soup with the cream cheese and the sour cream. This is a delicious casserole, and it's so easy to make. All right, that's it. Let me get my mixer out of the way, the beaters. I know that sounds like I'm beating those hard, but I'm really not. Very simple and easy and gentle. Okay, you want to take your mixture. I'm going to actually get a little bit of a bigger spatula here. And you want to pour that over top of the chicken. That cream cheese will add a richness to the dish. The sour cream adds, of course, richness and moisture, but also a little bit of tang. It's delicious. All right, just stir that around. Just cover your chicken. You don't need to mix it, just put it over top of it. All righty. Now, I have in this bag some of the round Ritz crackers that you buy in the grocery store. And you just want to make those into crumbs. I like to just put them in a Ziploc bag and use a meat mallet or a rolling pin or anything really. You just want to crumble them up. Okay? And then we're going to put that over top of this. Just an even layer over top of your chicken and your sour cream mixture. Then I have here 1 stick of butter and the rest of those poppy seeds. I'm going to stir that together. Pour that over top of the crumbs, and that'll help the crumbs to brown even more. Make it nice and golden. Okay, and I like the look of the poppy seeds on top. If you don't want that, you can put them all in the mixture. It's up to you. Uncovered, 350 degrees for about 30 to 40 minutes. And you will have one of the best tasting casseroles that you have ever eaten. It really is delicious. Put that in my sink. That's one of those dishes that if you wanted to make it ahead and pop it in your freezer, just do that part. Don't cook it. Just, put it in like one of those aluminum foil pans and then cover it with a couple of layers probably of aluminum foil. Label it what you've got. And then from frozen, you would probably need to at least bake it for an hour. If you can thaw it overnight, it would be easier, probably 30 to 45 minutes. But that is a great dish to take to a potluck dinner, to church after church service dinners that they do, dinner on the ground as we used to call them. Maybe take it to someone's house that you're taking a meal to. I mean, it just is one of those things that is so easy and so simple to do. Now, we're going to get started on our cupcakes. I have here 1 box of a cake mix. You could use spice cake mix, you could use carrot cake mix. Either one of those would be fine. So I've got that in there. And then this is whatever ingredients are called for on the back of your cake mix. Mine says 1/3 cup of vegetable oil, 3 eggs, and some water. So wait a minute, let me mix up my eggs. I like to do it put the eggs in with the oil and the water and kind of mix those up a little bit before I add it to the cake mixture. Just think it incorporates it a little bit better. That's what my box called for. Yours could be different depending on the brand. So you read, well, it would be helpful if I plugged it up. Forgot it was on. That's okay. We caught it before it went everywhere. I need it's a 2-hander here. Scrape down the sides of your bowl. You want to incorporate that for about 2 minutes or so, just to really get that mixed up on medium speed. Set that to the side for just a second. Now, here's where you're going to need to dice up a couple of apples. I'm using ambrosia apples, but you could use Granny Smith. You could use Golden Delicious. You could use Jazz. You could do whatever you wanted to. I have washed these. I like to leave the skins on because I think it adds a lot of flavor. So what I do is cut around that core. If you have an apple core, that's great. You want to mince these into finer pieces because they're going into cupcakes. So I'll show you here on one. I want 2 apples. You see how I'm just cutting those into fine pieces? That's what you want to do. I'm just going to mince up these apples, put them in there, and when I come back, I'll show you how we get the cupcakes in the oven, and we'll get started on our potatoes. I'll be back in just a minute. All right, now all I did was chop the apple and I just stirred it into my cake batter mixture. I have here some muffin pans. If you have the jumbo muffin tins, this is great for those, but I don't have any of those here on the set. But you can use just regular muffin tins. You can line them if you want to. If you don't use the liners, spray it with the non-stick spray. I use if I can find it, there it is, the baking spray. There's 2 of them. There's one that's just regular non-stick spray, but then there's also a baking spray that I like to use for any kind of baked product, like a pastry or something like that. Now, I like to do mine with an ice cream scoop. You know that. So we want to add I like to just fill it up like this, 350 degrees for about, we'll check them in 15 minutes. And we'll take a toothpick inserted into the center that comes out clean. Same thing. Okay. These are really good. If you're a caramel apple fan, or a butterscotch fan, you're going to love these. They really are delicious. You could also grate that apple if you did not want it to have the chunk of apple in it. You could grate it. That would be fun too. Either way you want to do. I like to use the ice cream scoop because then they all are the same size. And it makes it a little easier to, bake more evenly. Oh, see, I probably got about, well, I'll just add a little more of my baking spray here. And use the rest of this up because we don't want to waste these cupcakes. Okay. All righty, here we go. I probably got enough for one more. Okay. Maybe even two more. Yeah, there we go. Okay. 350 degrees, and we'll check them in 15 minutes. So let's get these in. The middle rack. Pretty much anytime you're baking a cake or, cupcakes or breads, anything like that, middle rack of the oven is where you want your rack to be, in the middle, because that way it's a little more evenly heated. If you put it on the bottom, then the crust is going to get too brown. If you put it on the top, maybe the top will get too brown. That's why placement of your rack is important. Okay, now we're going to make just a very easy little side dish to go alongside our casserole. And that's going to be just some sauteed I like red potatoes. You could obviously use any kind you wanted. Let me get my pan getting warm. I'm using olive oil because there's really not a lot of extra flavors in here. And the olive oil really kind of helps shine through. But if you don't want to use olive oil, you could use canola or vegetable oil. You want to have, it really just honestly depends on the size of your pan. You want to completely coat the bottom of your pan and come up maybe 1/4 of an inch off the bottom. You want to get that heating. I have scrubbed these. I don't like to peel my potatoes. I prefer to leave the skins on if possible, because you really get flavor and nutrients. Now you can cut these into cubes. You can cut these into slices. You can cut them whatever shape you want. I think I'll just do slices today. If you have a mandolin, it's great to just, you slice them all with the mandolin. If you're using your knife, watch your fingers and try to get them all about the same thickness. That way they cook quicker, or more evenly rather. Let me get that little piece off there. I love little red potatoes. They're probably my favorite little potato. I just love them. I think they're great in many, many applications. They don't make the best mashed potatoes. Other than that, they're delicious. They just have they're a little too waxy and not as fluffy for mashed potatoes. But Yukon Golds are great. Or sometimes I see them as butter potatoes, or of course, obviously, russet potatoes. There really is a difference in the potato. A waxier potato is better for frying or roasting, that kind of thing. And your red potatoes are waxier than your Idahos. That has a little tiny little spot. Let me get that out of there. You want a couple of pounds of potatoes. I don't have them prepped ahead, as you see. These are just little ones. They come in all kinds of sizes. The little ones like this size are great whole, just roasted whole, coated with a little oil, salt, and pepper. Okay, is my oil getting hot? You don't want to put your potatoes in the oil until that oil is hot. Now, I went out to my herb garden this morning because I have a little herb garden, and I picked some fresh rosemary. If you don't have fresh rosemary, this is one herb that I think dries beautifully and honestly tastes almost as good dried as it does fresh. You'll need more fresh than you do dried. Dried has a much stronger flavor. I like to just take my rosemary and hold it at the top and draw backwards with your finger, and that strips all those little leaves off. See, just do that and they come right off, and then just pinch the top off is fine. I want to have a couple of good tablespoons of fresh rosemary. If you are using dried rosemary, then you will want probably not quite 1 tablespoon. It's about a 3-to-1 ratio. For fresh, you use 3 times as much as you do dried, and I think that is probably going to be more than enough. I would say rosemary's my favorite. It's one of those herbs that really are very, very hardy in your garden. I've got a rosemary plant in my yard that has been there for over 4 years and still produces rosemary. So what you want to do is you want to gather up, let's get our potatoes in there real quick. Yeah, you want to hear that sizzle. So you want to add your potatoes gently because you don't want to burn yourself. Alrighty. Add some salt. Potatoes can use a lot of salt. And some pepper. Let that go a minute. Now, back to our rosemary. Just take your bunch, run your knife through it. And then, you've seen me do this many, many times. Just work your herb, in this case rosemary. Put one end of your knife on your board and then just lift it and just take it ever so often and swish it around so you're not always cutting in the same direction. And just chop it until it's fine as you want it. Rosemary is a little stronger and the leaves are bigger, so you want to make sure that you chop it pretty fine on rosemary. A smaller leaf herb, obviously like thyme or something like that, won't take nearly as much time. Thyme won't take as much time. I'm just going to chop this real fine. I'm going to let those simmer. When I come back, we'll finish this up and we're going to make a delicious salad dressing to go on a wonderful little spring salad. I'll be back in just a minute. Alrighty, now you can see how I have just worked that rosemary to where it's really, really, really fine. That's exactly what you want. And if you don't use all of this, which I probably won't, keeps beautifully. Just put it in a little Ziploc baggie. All right, so I'm going to take you don't have to measure this. And if you don't like rosemary, you can leave it out or substitute with whatever herb you like. That's probably going to be plenty of rosemary. So I'll just keep the rest of this in a little container. It'll get used. You want to just stir your potatoes around ever so often until they start getting golden. Alrighty, now, over the break, all I did was slice some strawberries and just kept turning the potatoes. Now, I switched over to a pair of tongs, and as they get brown, I just like to flip them over to make sure that they all get nice and golden. They look and smell amazing. Cannot wait to eat these. Our cupcakes are done, so we'll get those in just a second. Now, I have here just some regular mixed green salad mix that you buy in the grocery store. And I just sliced up some strawberries. I used my egg slicer. You can either do them by hand or, you know, I like the little egg slicer for it. You just pop it in there and it's done. Just an easy, quick way to slice up strawberries. Then here's where you can use your imagination, whatever you like. I like pecans or walnuts in my salad. It adds texture, it adds crunch, it tastes delicious. And if you want to add some cheese, you can. I'm just using a little bit of Monterey Jack, but you can use just cheddar or whatever you want. Keep a little bit for the side for people to add more if they want. I love cheese, but on my salad, I don't like a lot of cheese. I don't know why. I just don't. All righty. Now, we are going to, while I make the dressing, I'm going to make the topping for the cupcakes. I have here just a skillet. I'm adding a bag of butterscotch chips. Had to think a second what I'm doing. And I need to grab a little whisk. And I've got that on low, and I'm just going to melt those. Keep an eye on them. Don't burn your cupcake or your chips. I have here just some neutral oil. I'm using vegetable oil. I'm adding about 1/3 cup of just strawberry preserves, some red wine vinegar. I'm using a sugar substitute, but you could use regular sugar, about 1/3 cup. And just whisk all that together. That the strawberry jam will just dissolve down into the vinegar and the oil, and you're making just a quick little easy dressing. If you want to add some poppy seeds, feel free. Up to you. If you don't want to add them, don't. Adds a little texture and a little flavor. And that's it. A little salt and pepper. Our potatoes are done, our cupcakes are done. I'm sure the casserole's done. Don't pour your dressing over until you're ready to serve. All right, we're just going to melt these. You could also do this in the microwave if you wanted to. Just put it in a microwavable cup. I think I'm going to add just a touch, and I mean just a touch of milk. Maybe a tablespoon, maybe, just to kind of help that melt and thin it out just a touch. That was probably not even a tablespoon. That was about a teaspoon of milk. If you're doing it on the stovetop, sometimes that helps loosen it up, and it did. You don't want it thin. You just want it melted. Okay, let's get the chips out of the middle of I made a mistake. I should have used a spatula instead of a whisk at that point. That's okay. It'll come out back in there. All righty. You just want to melt these. Our potatoes are done. I'm going to turn those off. Okay. You see how that just melted? That's what you want. Don't burn them. Just melt them. That's all you're doing. I like to do it on the heat of the stovetop because it does help to kind of caramelize the bottoms or the butterscotch chips. All righty, but that's it. Now, these just came out of the oven. I inserted a toothpick to make sure they were done, and they are. And you want to take a little bit of your, let me get a spoon first, little bit of your butterscotch chips, okay? And you want to just put them over top of your warm cupcake, okay? And then sprinkle them with a little bit of just finely chopped up pecans or walnuts if you want to. And there's a quick, easy, delicious little caramel apple cupcake for you. Now, let's get our chicken out because I'm sure it's done. Let me clean up my mess here. Let me get this out of the oven and we will serve it up. Oh, smells so, so, so good. I don't want to put that on my countertop. Let's put it on my cutting board here. Oh, look how that's just bubbling and yummy. Whew. All right, now, best part, let's get ready to eat. We're going to just add our dressing. Stir it up right before you serve. Don't overdress it, just put a little bit. Serve that on the side. Put your potatoes on your plate. Those yummy sauteed potatoes with rosemary that I picked fresh this morning, but again, if you don't have fresh, you can use dry. It's perfectly fine.